back to a brand new episode of Virtual Coffee. My name is Alexa Collier, and on this podcast, I chat with small business owners from around the world. Now with me today is Dee, the founder and owner of Dee's Burnt Trees. She creates art by burning wood, and her pieces are extremely beautiful and very unique. Now on this episode, Dee shares how she got started with her craft and also dives into advice on how to succeed as a business owner. So be sure to check out Dee's Burnt Trees after this episode. Now, before we hear from Dee, as always, I'd appreciate if you could rate and review Virtual Coffee on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. It helps others discover the small businesses that we feature. And you can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and all the other social medias. It's all at Virtual Coffee Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and now let's hear from Dee. Welcome, Dee. Thank you so much for being a guest on Virtual Coffee.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you reaching out and having me on your podcast.
Of course. Happy to have you here as a guest to introduce, yourself and your business. So let's start off with just that. Can you give us a little description of Dee's Burnt Trees and let the audience know who you are as well?
Yeah, so I am Dee. My name is Danielle, but everybody calls me Dee. I run a small art pyrography business, which is essentially just wood burning. I mainly am teaching classes right now, but I also do sell some items in some consignment stores as well. And it's really wonderful. I do love the teaching classes. I'm teaching all in the Raleigh area right now and surrounding areas. And we go from making, I'll teach people how to make their own charcuterie boards with their own wood burning design and or bookmarks or coasters or an artistic piece of their choice. And it's very rewarding to watch people come into the class as beginners and not know what they're doing, and then they walk out with this wonderful art piece that they didn't know they could make.
I definitely want to get into the products in a bit, but where exactly do you teach in the Raleigh area? I didn't know you were teaching.
Yeah, so I've been teaching now about maybe the past year, but I teach at a couple different locations. One of my main spots is downtown Raleigh with Joy Worthy Co., and the owner's name is Lauren, and she's really wonderful. And then I will also teach out at a consignment shop in Apex called Sawdust and Clay, and the owners there are Jim and Amy, and they are wonderful too. I also sell a couple items there. And then I'll teach I have a class coming up at Pineapple Soul, which is out in Cary. I'll go out to Wendell Falls and teach out at Haven Farms. So there's a bunch of different businesses around the area, and I'll just kind of go. Whoever wants to host me there, essentially, will reach out to each other and kind of set up a date and time, and then people come there, and I have everything set up for them, and they get to just show up, do the wood burning, and then go home with their new art piece.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm familiar with all those places. I'll have to take a class from yours because I live in Wake Forest, but I'm in the Raleigh area, so that would be so much fun. Yeah, those classes sound like a blast.
They are so much fun. I absolutely love them. And it's really fun, like getting to interact with all these people, hear their stories, get to know everybody. And like, you really get like on a much more personal level, getting to know people. And then like just seeing their beginning face to their end face where they're like, I can't do this. And then they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I did this.
Yeah, that moment of awe and discovery. And yeah, because I'm sure it's a craft that not a lot of people have tried before. And speaking of that craft, can you describe it to our audience who may, have not visited your Instagram yet or seen exactly what you're talking about, what exactly it is that you do?
Yes, so wood burning is essentially the art of putting fire, heat to wood. So I take a really, really hot pen, essentially, and I will carve or heat designs into the wood, and you just kind of manipulate the wood however you want to make your design. And I'll add color to it, I'll add shading to it, I'll do all different types of, I'll mess around with a lot of different types of variations of it. But it's really, it's just wood burning. It's really fun to just kind of watch how the wood will change too, because it gets like a nice deep color. And then when you add like your sealant over it, like I'll add like either poly or resin or hemp oil too on it. And it it makes the color of the burnt part pop through the wood, and it really pulls it out, and it just shines for you afterwards. But I'll do anything, I'll wood burn like bookmarks, coasters, keychains, spoons, cutting boards, or portraits, anything from a wide variety of things, and just kind of whatever is floating my boat that day.
Yeah. How did you get into this? Was it a lot of folks who come on this podcast, sometimes it's a hobby that turns into a business. Sometimes they were looking for something to, fill some time, especially with the pandemic when we all had extra time on our hands. Like, how did you discover this?
Well, it's actually a funny story. I had never heard of wood burning myself until I tried it out. I was right after my son was born, and I had quit my job to stay home with him. I was in the healthcare career before this and completely stopped that. And it was like a couple months after he was born, and I was like, I need something. I need something for me. So my husband actually had an old soldering tool that he's like, here, try this. I've heard people burning wood with things like this. And he's like, just try it, see what happens. And so I took his soldering tool and put it to wood and tried it. And I was like, oh, this is actually pretty fun. And I'm like, I really like this. And so I started looking more into it, and I bought like a beginner's wood burning pen and from the craft store for like $15. And that was what I used for the first 2 years, was this little wood burning pen, and just started off making like, portraits or small art pieces for family and friends. And that's really what I was mainly doing, it just for an outlet for myself, just for fun. And I quickly kept getting orders, and people were like, well, can you make me this? Can you make me that? Can you do this? And I was like, absolutely, because I have such a hard time saying no, and I wanted to try it so badly as well. So it just kind of formed into a business after that. And I was like, well, I'm going to keep going. And then it turned even more, and I started doing the markets around here. And then I got into classes next, and I was like, I can't believe where this has taken me. But it all just started from my husband handing me a soldering tool and said, just try this, like, see what happens.
That's funny. He's like, just try to burn this wood. See,
Right?
Go for it.
I know. It is so funny. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to burn something now.
And when you do it, and you may have mentioned this, but are you all freehand? Do you stencil? Like, are you naturally a artistic person, where, you've drawn before or just have that eye for art? What is your process like?
So I do a combination. Sometimes I'll use stencils, sometimes I'll just freehand it. It depends on kind of the piece that I'm working on. Like wording, I'm always going to use a stencil. I cannot do wording or cursive, like fancy lettering to save me. I don't know what it is with lettering. That's just not my thing. But you get like somebody's face or like shapes or like something to design work. I'm like, oh, I could freehand that. So I'll do a lot of freehand work with like a lot of my artistic pieces and just kind of see what happens. And I've never really taken an art class in my life. I've always just had it as like an outlet, like as a thing for me to do on the side. And I used to do a lot of painting, but never anything like this. This was just something that kind of formed in its own life and grew out of its own way. It was really interesting to watch the journey too. But I've always just had art as like a side outlet for me. And then I just have taken it a lot more seriously these past couple years and been trying to study. I guess the most studying I do with it is I'll watch other artists on YouTube and just kind of watch their techniques. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to try that with my piece and see what I can do with that. So it is just kind of a combination of whatever I'm working on and see what I need to do for that type of art piece.
That's really neat. So definitely continuously learning as you go, upping your craft, evolving your craft. That's growth mindset at its finest. That's awesome.
Yeah, you definitely, it's like, you just got to have that mindset of like, I always like to say, I like to make the ugly art so that I can make the good art.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that mindset a lot. Do you tend to, I'm looking at the products you sell. Do you have set stock or set designs, or is it usually upon request? More so asking, for those listening who might want to check you out and go to your website, how does your process of selling your products work?
So I do have some set that like earrings and bookmarks, I can remake the designs very easily. There are some pieces that are just like one of a kind though, and I probably like the bigger pieces, the very big intricate pieces, I'm probably just going to make once. I'm looking to get some of the bigger pieces made them into like prints or something like that, so people could have the option to still have something of original artwork. But those pieces I'm probably not going to remake. They're a one and done, and I don't think I could remake some of them as well. But definitely like a lot of the smaller items are, I can remake them again and again and again. But I do a lot more of custom orders or requests. I get a lot of different types of requests for things that I'm always open to try and make.
I'm just scrolling through your Instagram now as we speak, and I love your style. It's so unique. Your style plus the medium of the wood, like the jellyfish, the monstera, the bees, they really pop out and stand out. So everyone check those out. It's just so unique.
Thank you. Yeah, I really love the color.
Yeah. How does the color work? Now I'm just diving into the process in general, but how do you get the color on there?
So I use you mainly use watercolor, and
wow.
I use a lot of gouache too, which is just a mixture of watercolor and acrylic. But I just add it into the wood, and it's really nice working with like that type of medium in the wood, because the wood will soak up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But you can manipulate it if you add some water to the wood, and then you add your color, and then you add water and color, and you kind of like play around with it a little bit. You can get some really nice blending techniques there. And then once you put your sealant on, that's what really pulls the color a lot through. Like if I add resin on top of like a really commercial piece, oh my God, does it just like, it pulls all those colors through, and it pops. I love doing that. I love seeing the result of that.
You're right. Like it pops. It is so beautiful, so unique. Where do you source your wood from? I mean, you don't need to get into super specifics, but is it hard to obtain wood like that? I just, this is so new for me. I find it fascinating.
Yeah, it's actually, I've been, well, now that people know me as, the wood lady, I have a lot of people, like friends and families, if they ever like cut a tree down or anything, they always give me their wood. We'll
Nice.
like cut it and plane it and dry it out, and then I'll repurpose it. But a lot of the stuff I get either from like a craft store, like the smaller pieces, or like the live edge pieces I get from just a local craft store. A lot of the brand I use is a Walnut Hollow, and they make some good wood that I like. That's usually like the pieces don't have a lot of like markings within it, and they're pretty good about like sizes with their pieces of wood too. And then sometimes I'll just find random pieces of wood and just put it to use.
That's cool. Always on the lookout for wood.
I always encourage anybody who wants to try it, just pick some up at the craft store. The only advice I say is do not use treated wood or pressure treated wood, because it is toxic for you to breathe in when you burn it.
Very good tip. Thank you for that. For anyone who wants to try it, for sure. That's a great tip.
Yes.
And just one quick logistical question. Are you able to ship your products, or are you just local to the Raleigh area?
Absolutely. I can definitely ship. I've been shipping US and Canada mainly. I haven't gone to much farther than that, to be honest.
Yeah, but that's great. I always say a big congratulations for anyone who can figure out shipping. I know that's a big deal. So that's great that anyone listening can buy one of your pieces.
Absolutely. Yes.
Awesome. Excellent. And kind of diving more into quote unquote the business side of things. How was it launching Dee's Burnt Trees? I'm always interested in your origin story, more focused on the business side of things. Like what was that like? Any standout moments where upon reflection, you're thinking, oh, that was a huge moment for me, or that was a huge accomplishment, or maybe a huge challenge? Just looking to get at those highlights of your journey of launching the business that might lead into advice for others who are a business owner or looking to start a business.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't easy. I'll be honest with that. It definitely had its challenges. I have my son, he's finally in school and daycare right now, but when I first started this, he was home with me full time, and I was trying to run this business full time. So that was my biggest challenge of like trying to manage being able to like be a mom and take care of my kid and then also run a business and get it off the ground and try and get it running. So that was my biggest challenge, was just time management. There just could not be enough hours in a day for me. I could not get enough done. So I was spent a lot of my time questioning my sanity and what I was doing. But
Mm-hmm.
once I started kind of getting a flow, I think it was right when I started doing a lot of the craft markets in my local area, was when I started to kind of, it really helped me because I could see people and their reactions to what art was working, what specific type things I should really focus my energy on, and, kind of put aside some of the things that weren't selling so well or people weren't interested in. So that really helped me a lot as to where I can just hone all my energy and my time into certain pieces and certain types of art, and then go from there and make that more of a priority. And I think that was one of my biggest changing moments of like being able to figure out my specifics, my things that do work and what don't work. And that helped me a lot. And then once it started progressing even more from the craft markets, I was able to start doing the classes more. And once I started doing the classes, I haven't been doing the craft markets as much anymore, because the classes, I've been trying to focus more of my energy on that now, because I'm finding that is much more productive for my time now. So it's kind of like your business will evolve as well too. It will change, it's definitely not where I was in the beginning. And when I was started this, I didn't think I would ever be at this point. I didn't even know where I was going with this. But it's kind of interesting now looking back. I'm like, man, I have changed my direction so many different times, but it's all been for the better, because I'm relearning where I should be focusing my energy at and where I should be, putting all that towards, and not wasting materials or time or energy or things like that. And then I can really hone in on what's important.
Yeah, it sounds like you followed a really great process, which was first listening to your customers, right? And like you said, focusing on either what was maybe selling well or getting good reaction or just getting that feedback, and then moving into what sounds like optimizing your business. So, like you're mentioning the resources and whatnot. It's so like having that balance of listening to the people, right? The people who are following you, who are in your business, want to support your business, plus the business side of it, of how to optimize, how to make it efficient, and meeting that in the middle. I think that's a great way to think of it, because you can't lean too heavily on one or the other, right? You got to have that listen to the people, but also I'm running a business. How do we merge those two mindsets together?
Exactly. Like, how can I also meet their needs and meet their needs and meet my needs at the same time?
Exactly. I think that's a great mindset. I often use that kind of balance at my own job at work, and I really like that. You have to balance that out.
Yeah.
And where are you at now with Dee's Burnt Trees? Kind of interested in where you're hoping to take the business further. Any big goals or milestones ahead that you want to share? Kind of where's your mindset at right now?
I'm definitely really loving the classes. It has like become a new passion of mine, of like teaching people, and like that has been the new thing. So I really want to take classes and keep going with them. I want to start adding more. Like, I want to have a beginner's class, an intermediate, and advanced class. I want to be able to teach different levels or ranges of people, and then they can have the option to do more if they wanted to do more. So I'm looking to just expand my classes, expand my reach and my locations. I'm always looking for different places to have a class at. I think that is the next big milestones for Dee's Burnt Trees, is to really hone in on the classes and get it out there more.
It's cool how that's evolved, right? Did you ever imagine way back when you first started Dee's Burnt Trees that classes would become the thing you're passionate about right now?
Absolutely not. I was thinking, I'm like, oh, I'll be doing the art for like the main thing and that'll be it. And I just kept thinking like that was my mindset for the longest time, was I had almost tunnel vision of like just the art. And I was doing the craft shows And I was like, this is not sustainable though, because I was working my butt off for these and could not maintain that level of like work. But these classes, I've just found that I'm like, oh my God, I am much more passionate about this. And it requires a little bit less physical work on me because I don't have to prep all the pieces. I bring it to them and I say, you do it now. So that's kind of the nice part about it is it's a little bit easier for me to prep for these classes. But I have truly found that the teaching aspect of it, I'm like, oh my goodness, I love teaching. I didn't ever think that I would love teaching, but I really love it.
It's good advice in that, in your experience there, to let the business evolve how it will, right? You can guide it and have a goal or a vision. That's important. But overall, letting the doors open for you, or like exploring those doors that you may have never thought would open, not being afraid to go down that route. I think that's a good story to share for others.
Absolutely. And just kind of being open-minded that, you may have an idea for your business to go one way, but it may need to go a different way, or just trying different things out and seeing where it takes you. Sometimes it's almost like you got to like just jump in the water before testing it out and just see what happens.
Right. Exactly. All about that experimentation and just kind of going for it and learning from it. Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
Awesome. And is Dee's Burnt Trees your full-time job? I'm always interested if the guests I have on are balancing that with another job, or were you able to take Dee's Burnt Trees full-time?
Yeah, this is what I do full time now.
Wow.
Yeah, it has been so nice. And now that my son is finally in daycare as well, I can actually focus a lot more time and energy into Dee's Burnt Trees, because I was having him home full time and doing Dee's Burnt Trees. And that was very tough to do. It was like I felt like four full-time jobs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a lot.
I can only imagine. And kind of going off of that, any advice or even just a perspective to share for anyone listening who might be in that similar situation? Maybe they have kids at home or have that full-time job, whatever it is, and they're also looking to try to follow their passion, start their business. Any advice or perspective there?
Oh, yes. Just plan for things to go wrong. Just expect something to go wrong, expect a kid to be sick, something like that, and try and get done as what you can get done when you have that time. And then it kind of goes back to really figure out what you need to focus your time on. Prioritize the more important things that are going to essentially make a bigger difference in your business than the small things that you might think matter, but they really don't at the end of the day. You just got to figure out what is working best for your business and prioritize those main things. Get it done while you have that little bit of time. And then you just go back and forth, essentially. You learn to kind of have a little bit of time management. And there is that beginning period of it's going to be really rocky at first. And you just got to be really patient with yourself, I think, and like understand that it's going to be stressful at first until you can kind of get into a flow, and just have a lot of patience and grace for yourself as well. Remind yourself that you're doing something really hard. This is not easy, especially when you got kids or small kids. It's a lot. You're being pulled in a lot of directions. But if you really just hone in on what's important, what you need to focus your time in on, it makes a big difference.
I like that advice on that time management or time focus, right? Like how you're saying, I think the underlying advice there too is do what's best for you. It's going to be different for everyone. As I've learned from this podcast, there is no playbook for running it. There really isn't a playbook for running a business. Everyone has their own playbook. Maybe there's some basic things to learn or follow the steps on, but there's really not. It's just everyone's journey is so different, and you got to do what's right for you and what works for you and your other priorities.
Exactly. Yeah, everyone has their own path, and it's okay if your path is different than someone else's. It's a big, comparison game too that you got to get yourself out of. Like, If
Right.
somebody else is doing something their own way, that's for them. You got to figure out what works for you and your own little path. It's okay. Everybody's doing their own thing, and we're all on our own journey. And it's beautiful when you get to like look back at your own journey. You're like, whoa, I can't believe I made it through that. I did this. Like this was my own thing.
No, exactly. I completely agree. Because, yeah, if you follow someone else's recipe, then you'll just either fail or become them. And you're
Yeah.
not them. You're you.
Exactly. Be your unique self.
Exactly. No, I love that piece of advice. That's great. Excellent. Dee, my last question that I end every episode with is most folks say the hardest, but just interested in knowing, as of right now, in this moment, what is your proudest accomplishment so far? And I'm really just looking for that off the top of your head, based on our discussion, or maybe it's on a completely different topic. Right now, what is your proudest accomplishment?
I definitely will have to go with my progression of the classes. I think looking back when I first started classes, I was such like a newbie with teaching and like figuring out how to teach people. But now I've started to learn how to show people techniques better. And I'm learning how people learn too, which is a whole, thing in itself. But I had a class recently that this person pulled me aside, and she like at the end of the class, she was like, I really appreciate the way you teach, the way you take the time and spend it with every single individual person. And you don't teach the same for everyone. You teach how that person needs. And she said that really made a difference for her specifically because she learned a different way than the rest of everyone. And so she made it a point to tell me that, and I think that like it hit me in the heart. I was like, oh my God, that felt so good to hear such like a positive feedback. And I was like, this is why I'm doing this, to get people to feel confident in their own selves and to really show them that they can do something themselves too. And she even told me that she was like, well, I'm going to buy, a new wood burning pen. I'm going to try this at home. And I was like, absolutely. Please reach out if you have any more questions. I'm like, I love teaching. Like that was so worth it,
That's really beautifully stated. And congratulations on everything you've accomplished so far. And to your point, that teaching aspect is not easy. It sounds like, you found a way to craft or make your teaching style unique that works for each person. And that's very hard to do, just creating that experience and that environment. So again, congratulations on everything you've accomplished so far.
Thank you.
Again, thanks so much for being on the podcast and sharing your story. It's very inspiring for others. And before we sign off, Dee, where can people find you and Dee's Burnt Trees? Social medias, website, shout everything out.
Yeah, so I have a website at www.deesburntTrees.com, and you can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at just Dee's Burnt Trees. That's where I'm at. And thank you again for having me here and reaching out. I really appreciate the time you spent with me.
Yeah, of course. No worries at all. And I hope everyone checks you and Dee's Burnt Trees out. And again, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you.